What's up, guys? We're back with another Super 7 Ultimates review, taking a look at the first Andre the Giant figure. So we've got our 8th wonder of the world here. So just like with all the other Ultimates figures so far, he comes in this kind of trapezoidal shaped box, which I really like, and he does have the slipcover. So you've got the 8th wonder of the world with his stats down there. You've got a shot of the big man himself on the side, and then the back of the box just kind of calls out where he's from, and then you've got his name, and then action figure call out down there on the bottom. Of course, pop this apart, and you've got the figure inside in that big monstrous window with a wrestling ring motif that wraps around the front. You've got his name down there on the bottom, and then the back of the box kind of has a little bit of a bio for him, a very old vintage style looking photo of Andre the Giant, as well as, again, his stats and where he hails from. So let's do it. Let's pull this big guy out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, the 8th wonder of the world himself, Andre the Giant. And before we get started, I do need to preface this review by saying that Super 7 did provide this guy for the purposes of review, but this is something that I don't know if I ever really expected to see anything like this from Super 7. It kind of seems, I don't know if saying it seems out of left field is correct, because they do have a lot of weird properties when it comes to what they do now, which is fantastic. But this guy was definitely not on the bingo card for me. Andre the Giant was never on there, nor was any of the wrestling stuff that they are working towards. But it's pretty cool. And this guy is, I mean, he's kind of an icon, really. So it's not necessarily just a wrestling figure to me. It's the man, the myth, the legend, you know, it is Andre the Giant. So this guy is going to fit into a lot of interesting setups and, you know, toy photography, all that kind of stuff. I feel like we're going to see this figure injected into a lot of weird situations with figures that he would never normally go alongside. So let's get started, see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. He is fairly similar to most Ultimates that we've gotten recently. I'm not seeing anything here that's truly different or really anything missing from a lot of those other figures that we've gotten, Turtles or Thundercats in particular. So he's got a ball peg for the head. He can look up slightly and he can look down a little bit, but it's mostly just sort of a forward-facing look. He does have a little bit of tilt at the head. Actually, it's gotten better as I play around with it, so that's actually pretty good. And then you've got full rotation up there as well. The arms go out at the shoulders all the way. And then you've got full rotation, of course. We've got our bicep swivel, single jointed elbows, about 90 degrees roughly, and then you've got hinges and rotation at those wrists. He does have a diaphragm cut, but it's really just a twist. It does offer a little bit of backwards and forwards movement, but it's mostly just to give him a little bit more mobility as far as twisting, just because of his, well, I mean, he's not fat, but he's stocky and beefy figure. So he's got a very barrel-shaped chest, so he doesn't really have a lot of room to rock in any one direction. He goes backwards a little bit, forward slightly, but then of course this does allow him to move rotationally at the pecs, and then he also has a waist twist as well. I honestly didn't think it was there at first. It didn't seem like it was locked in place, but it also just sort of looked like it might have been one big piece there. You've got legs that go out about this far. They kick forward about that far. They do not kick forward all the way. If you twist them, they'll go a little bit further. It's mostly just because the thighs are hitting the trunks pretty quickly. They do kick backwards slightly. You do have your thigh cut up there. We've got our single jointed knee, so 90 degrees there. We've got a really nicely hidden boot cut. So full rotation at the boot, and then you've got a great rocker down here and hinges at those ankles. Nothing gets in the way, so he can hinge and rock just fine. So he is very much in line with the other Ultimates in terms of articulation. Again, I don't think we're missing anything. There's not really anything too much different here, so we're getting exactly what I expected to get. There's certainly nothing that's going to make him seem like a different kind of figure. He very much meshes with Thundercats, with Turtles, all that kind of stuff. So very much the same kind of articulation scheme we're already used to, just on a much bigger figure. Visually, though, is where a lot of my interests lie with this figure. I say that a lot, but this guy is pretty unique, honestly, because of the fact that Andre the Giant was, I mean, he was such a larger-than-life individual, and he has a really unique and really easily identifiable body style. I mean, he is a massive, massive guy, and when you stack him up next to other figures, you're going to see just how large this figure is, and we will do size comparisons here in a bit, but this guy really kind of echoes the idea of the fact that he was humongous. He was over 7 feet tall, and he was 500 pounds. You know, he was humongous. So this guy does have a very unique body style. I'm going to take the soft goods off for now, just so we can talk about his overall sculpt and how he looks, because he isn't exactly, you know, like a powerhouse looking type of figure. He is big and he's beefy, but he's not chiseled and he's not ripped, and you don't see all the sinew and the veins popping out of his body, because he very much wasn't that kind of guy. So he does have a really unique look and a unique shape. I mean, that's not your superhero shape, but this is a huge monster wrestling guy shape. And I think they did a really solid job here. It very much comes through that this is a humongous man that had a tremendous amount of power behind him. So a lot of the details are maybe a little bit more soft than we're used to seeing on most action figures, because they're all very chiseled and all very ripped in many instances. And this guy isn't that. And this also comes from someone who is not a wrestling collector by any means. So this is something that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse in many instances, but I do think they did a really solid job here. So you can see some subtle hints of musculature, kind of like in the triceps. You can see it in the back here at the traps, but then you've also got these kind of like, you know, almost fat rolls on his back there, just to show that he was just a massive, monstrous man. And I think it comes through really well here. Again, this is kind of like a what you see is what you get kind of figure. It's a mostly naked dude, but he is humongous. There's a lot of plastic here, and for the most part, I'm really happy with him. I mean, it accomplishes what I think they set out to accomplish here. Black trunks, and then he's got the blue boots down here, which, compared to some of the softer details on the figure, are really well sculpted. So you've got a lot of wrinkles down in here. You've got the individually sculpted laces, which are of course painted that light blue to match the soles of the boots as well. So he's a cool looking figure, and he's very large, and he's going to be an imposing presence on the shelf, especially when you stack him up to more 6-inch scaled lines, but he even dwarfs some of the other Ultimates. And then we do, of course, have to talk about these soft goods. So I'm going to put them back on. They are very easy to take off, and they are just as easy to put back on. So no issues. No issues with that. And these are similar to like Mumm-Ra's robes or Splinter's robes. You know, this is stuff that was prototyped by C. Jism, so there is just kind of an inherent quality in that. And they hang really well. All the kind of tassels and the frayed edges look really good. The color looks nice. You've got, you know, different finishes on the inside versus the outside. So this almost kind of gives it, you know, kind of like a suede look, in a sense, and I really like it. He does come with a replacement hard plastic, well, rubbery plastic that we'll talk about, but I think this is definitely my preference for this guy, because it's a massive piece of fabric for one, but it hangs really well. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't mess with his articulation at all, and it just looks good on him. It's a very you know, time period specific kind of thing, but it's a cool little piece of soft goods to hang over top of this monstrous figure. And then rounding out the figure, well, at least is how he comes in the box, is the head sculpt. And there were some instances in the original prototypes where I thought some of the details were a little bit lost because of the fact that they were fully painted prototypes. These are, of course, not fully painted. And we're also seeing an instance where I don't think we have any of the severe sheen and just overall plasticky look that we saw with a lot of the other Super 7, like the Motu Classics, some of those. This guy looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of a matte finish to it. He does have a little bit of a shine, but overall, I'm really happy with this face. And it seems almost a little cartoony in some ways, but it definitely is quite identifiable that this is Andre the Giant. This is, of course, one of 3 head sculpts, and this is his really happy, kind of smiling head sculpt, which I think works really well. It's, again, something that I'll use in probably more of a goofy situation when it comes to taking pictures, or if I display him on the shelf with his head. But I think the overall detail is really well done. You've got kind of the 5 o'clock shadow. Painted eyes are really well done. You've got a little bit of shading up around the brow, and then the eyebrows are also painted really nicely. The hair is that kind of almost Jerry curl kind of look. So tons of sculpted detail in there. Not really any paint to speak of as far as bringing it out with any kind of a wash or dry brushing. But at the same time, I'm not really sure it needs it, because it just sort of highlights itself when any kind of light hits it. So sculpt, I think, is pretty good. Paint is really well applied on this head sculpt. No issues to speak of. There isn't much on the figure to begin with, so I think they took maybe a little bit extra care when it comes to applying paint on this head sculpt. So I'm pretty satisfied with it. And again, it's pretty recognizable once you get this guy out of the box what they were going for here. Of course, we have to get to the thing that I'm sure a lot of you are really curious about. How big is this figure? So he is definitely larger than every other Ultimates figure you may have in your collection right now. He's, around 8 inches tall, and he does have a lot of girth. He, again, has a very unique shape. He is certainly not like either of these figures. We've got our Lion-O and we've got our Laughing Prince Adam, both from Super 7, and these guys are very muscular, chiseled, cut style of figures, and Andre the Giant just isn't that. So he has a very unique shape, but he has a tremendous amount of height to him. I mean, you can just see he dwarfs these guys. Adam doesn't seem to care that he's shorter by comparison. Lion-O definitely does not seem to be too happy about it. But this guy definitely has a huge shelf presence, and I really like the fact that he does tower over some of these already larger figures, because Motu Classics and Thundercats Ultimates are, of course, 7-inch figures to begin with. Here he is with the Dolph Lundgren He-Man, so the movie He-Man, William Stout collection, and you can see that he's still quite a bit taller, but that figure is a little bit bigger than most Motu Classics. And there he is with Super 7 Raphael, and he's absolutely diminutive by comparison. But what about some other, maybe more normal 6-inch figures? So here we have to do a Mando. So here he is with the Beskar Mando, and then here he is with the Snake Supreme Cobra Commander, so he very much, again, dwarfs some of these normal-ish 6-inch style figures. We'll take that away, maybe a larger non-Super 7 7-inch figure. So here he is with the recent Spawn. So you can see he does just have a lot of shelf presence, a lot of size, a lot of weight, a lot of heft, all of that. Every kind of size adjective you can give to this guy, he's got it. And there he is with a MCU, well, not an MCU, a movie Wolverine, not an MCU. What am I talking about? So there you go, a good smattering of things. Super 7, non-Super 7, some Hasbro, some McFarlane stuff. You can get an idea that this guy is going to have a lot of shelf presence. He's very big, he's beefy, he's girthy, he's wide, he's deep, but he's overall very, very tall, and I think he scales really nicely with a lot of these figures. And then as far as accessories goes, Andre is pretty decently stacked. He has a decent amount of accessories here, especially for an Ultimates figure. It sort of fits in line with what we've seen with Thundercats, with Turtles, where they've tried to give him a bunch of different things to change up his appearance and just to give you different ways to display the same figure. So to start with, we do have 2 extra head sculpts. We've got the more stoic, slightly, I wouldn't say he's like angry or anything like that, but this definitely looks a little more stern, and certainly something that you could see in the ring with this guy. There is an entirely different sculpt. Obviously, the mouth isn't open, the brow is a little bit more lowered, and then he just looks a little bit more like he's about to ready to get into business with someone. So you've got that one. We've got this one, which is a smaller head in general, and it's a younger Andre the Giant, which I'm really surprised that we got something like this. Just in a general sense, it seems like it's kind of an oddball accessory, but it does look really good, and it does have a few more softer details. There's not as many wrinkles in the forehead, things like that, and he just seems to be a little bit more, almost a little bit more calm. And there's also less hair on this head as well. It's a smaller, more tightly cropped hair sculpt. So you've got 2 heads to choose from there. We have got 3 extra sets of hands. So you've got a set of gripping hands in the box. We've got a set of fists. So normal fists. So you've got a set of chopping or flat open palm hands. And then you've got a set of kind of style pose, slightly gripping, slightly open hands, so you can use this as kind of a wrestling pose or a grappling style pose with this guy. And then you've got the replacement for the vest. So we'll take this off. And you've got a replacement for the soft goods. So you've got 3 different ways to display them. You can display them, shirtless, or you can have the soft goods, or you can have this very rubbery piece that is, I mean, it's more in line with what you'd actually get with like maybe a vintage wrestling toy, or just a toy in general, is a rubbery piece rather than soft goods. And this thing actually fits him really, really well. It's a little bit tighter than the soft goods, of course, because it doesn't have to worry about flowing or anything like that. The color is different as well. It's a little bit more monotone. It's just kind of a tan brown, but I really like this. I don't intend to use it, I'm sure. I mean, I do really dig the soft goods. I like the way this looks on him, but I like this as an alternative, just like we got with Mumm-Ra, and just like we got with Splinter in their Ultimates lines. You get the soft goods, but then you also get this option if you wanted to go this route versus having the robe on him, or the vest rather. But then we do have one other accessory that is definitely my favorite. So we've got his can of beer. So this, of course, pays, you know, tribute, homage to the very classic photo of Andre the Giant holding a full-size beer can, but making it look like it's kind of like a thimble of beer because he was such a massive dude. He just dwarfed everything around him. So this isn't an actual can of beer. It does look like, of course, a vintage can with not with a pop top. So you actually had to, you know, crack it open the old-fashioned way, certainly before my time. And it's just called Giant Canadian beer. I do believe this is supposed to be a Molson, but it's a Giant Canadian. I'm sure there's licensing restrictions when it comes to that, but I do really like the fact that they included this. I love these kind of goofy accessories, and you can see, I mean, it just fits in his hand, but even now it still looks too small for him, which is perfect. It fits perfectly to recreate the picture and recreate that scene and that kind of point in time. It's a very famous thing, so I'm glad they included that here. So you've got a total of 8 hands, 3 heads, 2 sets of vests, or 2 vests rather, and then you've got the beer can. So all in all, I'd say this guy is pretty well stocked. So overall, this is a really fun figure. That is ultimately what it's going to come down to for me, is that I'm having a lot of fun with this guy. I'm, again, not a wrestling collector, but this guy, Andre the Giant, transcends that. He is an icon. He's a legendary figure. He's just a larger-than-life kind of guy, and he translated into figure form just really well. I like the way he's sculpted. I like the accessories he comes with. I love the soft goods vest. I love the idea that they give you the more toyish plastic rubbery vest as well. I love the beer can because that's a very iconic thing for him from that infamous photo. So there's just so much to do with this guy. You can stick him into pictures with other figures that he doesn't necessarily belong with, but he still looks like he does because he has that ultimate feel. So stick him with Laughing Prince Adam, stick him with your He-Mans or your Thundercats or your Turtles, all of that kind of stuff, and he's going to look really cool, maybe a little bit out of place, but maybe not at the same time, because he very much has that look and that feel. And again, I'm just having a lot of fun with this figure, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 Ultimates Andre the Giant. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.